The Library of Alexandria in the ancient city of Alexandria, Egypt, was one of the largest and most significant libraries of the ancient world. The library was part of a larger research institution called the Museum, or Museion, which was dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of the arts. The idea of it is believed, was initiated by Ptolemy I, also known as Soter, or possibly his son Ptolemy II, called Philadelphus. It had a research room, lecture halls, and a zoo, and the whole building was heated and cooled with running water. Scholars believe the library may have contained up to 500,000 manuscripts. The library was created by Ptolemy I Soter, who is the founder of the Ptolemaic kingdom. Most of the architecture of the complex was Greek. Some violent reaction against the influence of Greece is also noted in some of the documents. The library flourished under the patronage of the Ptolemaic dynasty and functioned as a major center of scholarship in the Hellenistic world. Historical background and significance. Ask a layman what the Library of Alexandria was, and they will almost invariably have an answer at the ready. It was one of the most previously and illustrious ancient libraries known to us, even though all that remains of it today is an archaeological dig site. It was founded during the Hellenistic period, a period at the end of the 4th century BC, when Greek culture was at the point of converging with those of Persian, Indian, Egyptian, and other civilizations. It was located in the Egyptian city of Alexandria, which attracted Greek-speaking and Greek-educated men from all sides of the Mediterranean and as far as India, who came for various reasons: trade, business, pilgrimage, or they needed some place to rest, to work, to study. For many, the house that was to become the Library of Alexandria was such a place. It quickly grew from being a private home and became home, or at least a home away from home, to some of the most brilliant polymaths from antiquity. For centuries after its foundation, the library was thought to be the intellectual center of the world, where scholars from all around the Mediterranean world would gather and meet to discuss their ideas within the garden and over meals. We know precious little about the library, but we can infer from these scanty details that it was one of the biggest ancient libraries, housing, at the height of its collection, between 40,000 and 700,000 items, numerous works on the art of conversation and persuasion, novel scientific discoveries, and greed and ambition on many books. It famously had scrolls on the art. These were written in Greek, no matter where they originated from. Official languages were rare, since not many cultures had them yet, Latin being the most famous exception, written in a fanatical Aramaic known as Galilean. Those who required help could turn to some of its staff, such as the title of the administrators in charge, employed directly by the pharaoh, his chancellor, and his secretary of the state in charge of imports and exports, and the intermediate position of the state institution, organized a 700 to 1,000-man team of collaborators, or the head librarian in charge of the royal and priest collections. Average duration 20 years. Staff were usually expected to buy their way to and from their job positions, as in most ancient libraries, with the only exception of Pergamon. Construction and architecture of the library. The remains of an ancient city founded before Christ, Alexandria became a prominent intellectual and cultural center and stood as one of the great cities of the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria, known as the Royal Library, was erected only a short time after the founding of the city and was a major part of the allure of Alexandria to visiting scholars. The city became a hub of multidisciplinary research activity, wealthy and profitable for scholars and academicians. The library was a work of art, its layout a multi-level marvel, with several statues outside its walls and rows of famous literary libraries inside. Copies of written works from Egypt and all known cultures were on their way to fill the shelves. The library already held the practical knowledge of mechanics, engineering, and architecture. Famous for Aristotle's books, it prophesied to become the home of European knowledge. With the advance of the Christians, the vision and work of pagans waned. When Thrasybulus took the city, contemporary reports say that the library held only scattered remnants of what they had once been. Construction of the library started during the reign of Ptolemy I Soter from 323 to 283 BC, and it was completed during the reign of his son, Ptolemy II. An open-air park lured visitors with its beauty amid man-made pools, meandering canals, rows of trees, and variety of shrubs. The museum complex was paid for with the help of the veritable ocean on which Alexandria was built. The institute was protected from the masses by a portico wall, but it was not separate from the city, as all free citizens of the city had the right to attend lectures and common meals there. Although usually referred to as a library, it was much more than a library in the modern sense. The library and its research institute, with its staff and scholars, had a main objective to encourage the creative process and to research, analyze, and manage a huge quantity of knowledge in many different disciplines. All gathered information had been written down or put together in the library's archives, and distributed texts into the archives of other cities and institutions. Design and layout. The placement of the Great Library would suggest that it was part of the research centre, or possibly a research institution. Few remnants of the Library of Alexandria are left, as the original library either collapsed after an earthquake or was burnt to the ground, depending on the source. The remains of the Library of Alexandria are thought to date from Ptolemaic times, because its location and design correspond to that period after remodeling became locally fashionable. The shape and form of the library building remains largely a subject of guesswork, even though several somewhat contradictory descriptions survive. There are accounts of a series of vaults in those buildings. These interiors were innovative, since to prevent break-ins, the plans of the chamber were not open to the other chambers, preventing burglars from getting away from anything valuable. While a general idea of the form of the original Serapeum may be made on the basis of ancient accounts and some modern descriptions, almost nothing is known about the plan of the Great Library. This article attempts to clear up the accommodation issue by examining the historical context of the library and the relevant Ptolemaic context. As this study will show, text and archaeological evidence established the layout of the museum and its buildings to warrant the conclusion that museum and library maintained clear, separate physical facilities. The library incorporated a storage space, stacks or both, which could protect books from the climate by 285 BC. Between 242 BC and 236 BC, a donation of papyrus and money for the purchase of papyrus suggests an investment in the existence of books that needed to be stored centrally for public use. Collections and holdings. The Library of Alexandria, as we have seen, housed a great amount of written and scientific knowledge and discoveries, which were appended to its collection from the diverse academic and research specializations for which it was renowned. The collections, which were ingrained with different approaches in scientific experimentation and had honored individuals' innovative thoughts, included works of excellent progress of knowledge from mathematicians, geometers, and individuals working on diverse engineering practices to chemists and individuals with expertise in biology and the characteristics of the natural world. The top-class collection of the library was itself a feature of the entity, and its collections and holdings appealed continuous visit. The pivotal attraction of the library's unique sequence of education was the likelihood of having access to the library's comprehensive collections of interdisciplinary resources, particularly rare and ancient manuscript scrolls, records, reference books, manuals, and reports on the progression of knowledge developed over centuries of development in science education practice. The library was regarded as the storage house of the most learned men from different corners of the world. Each of them was aware that their works in the library could not only be read by themselves, but by their future descendants or other erudite people. In such an appropriate atmosphere, work was dominant, and scholars would be expected to sit and read in the museum by night, as it was a different library. Ancient manuscripts and scrolls. The Library of Alexandria housed significantly more than 494,000 papyrus scrolls of the Hellenistic era, which was earlier than the Christian era. This proves the assertion that the library was multidisciplinary in nature and international in character. Ancient manuscripts also fascinate numerous book lovers and researchers who are curious about them because of the fact that ancient manuscripts and scrolls preserved the knowledge of antiquity. They were not restored or rewritten by modern scholars and readers. Therefore, the texts written upon them are generally considered to be in their most authentic forms. Ancient manuscripts and scrolls do not belong to single disciplines, the one medium in which the technical writings of artistic products, paintings, music, personal styles, geographic, ethnographic, linguistic antiques, religious beliefs, and moral and philosophical ideas that create the mosaic of human cultures of those past times can be found is those collections of texts. They are especially important for history, as it is the discipline that facilitates the establishment of certain disciplines or interdisciplines such as philology, epigraphy, papyrology, numismatics, and sigillography, which are kinds of auxiliary historical or historical helping disciplines. The authenticity and scientificity of these objects establish the reliability and accuracy of historical events and developments scaled with people and societies. The understanding of information about ancient manuscripts is very important for identifying, collecting, annotating, and editing the documents for historians according to their disciplines. This study will provide a descriptive analysis of the importance, properties, and challenges for the oral and written sources of the Library of Alexandria. Scholars and thinkers of the library. The figure most closely connected to the founding of the Library of Alexandria is Demetrius of Phaleron, a student of Theophrastus, who was himself a student of Aristotle. He is believed to have initiated the collection of scrolls by overseeing the transfer of papyrus texts from Athens to the library. Under the reign and direct influence of Ptolemy II, the library grew into a repository of the ancient world's knowledge, with its associated museon functioning as a temple of the Muses, the Greek goddesses of education. The center of Hellenic scholarship also attracted the interest and contributions of notable scholars and thinkers from across the ancient world, including Euclid, the father of geometry, and Archimedes of Syracuse, whose Archimedes palimpsest contains work later reshaping the field of mathematics. The lost Library of Alexandria is thought to have been home to the father of history, Herodotus, and his contemporary, the father of geography, Hecataeus of Miletus. Aristarchus of Samos, who posited the heliocentric model of the solar system, headed the library's grammar section, whereas Hypatia, a prominent female philosopher, was responsible for the larger library. The scholars and thinkers associated with the Library of Alexandria included, but not limited to, Philo and Diodorus, who both wrote about the library, and Ptolemy, who wrote and created the maps. Significant to most scholars studying ancient Egypt, the geographer Eratosthenes of Cyrene served as its head librarian from around 240 BC, but was adept in multiple disciplines. At the library, he made the first recorded attempts to calculate the Earth's circumference and built the Sekhmet temple. Archimedes, a mathematician, astronomer, and engineer. This clever mathematician supposedly asked for his perfect circle theorem to be engraved on his tombstone. Further, he calculated an approximation for the mathematical constant that we know as pi. Euclid, a geometrist and father of geometry. Over 2 millennia after his death, his book on geometry, The Elements, still sells, teaches, and is referred to. The book starts with a set of axioms containing what is true about points, lines, and circles. These postulates were the backbone of geometric thinking and knowledge for 2 millennia, and some are now taught in school geometry, such as the whole is greater than the part. And if a straight line falling on 2 straight lines make the interior angles on the same side less than 2 right angles, the 2 straight lines, if extended indefinitely, meet on that side on which the Belgian trio predict victory. Eratosthenes, a librarian, geographer, and astronomer. This father of geography calculated the size of Earth with remarkable exactitude. He quoted the distance of elephants from the Nile Delta, the ruins of the city of Thebes, and the gold deposits of Ethiopia in his poem Studiasmos into Being. All of these, of course, were based on actual measurements that he had carried out himself or by colleagues. He even was aware that it was now summer in Siwa and winter in Alexandria. Nowadays, travel time from Siwa to Alexandria is about 7 hours of driving, and the 2 cities would have the same seasons. Destruction and legacy. History records several fires that historians claim destroyed sections of the Library of Alexandria. The most widely reported and bit of myth includes the burning from Caesar's attack on the docks in 48 BC. Regardless of the reality of these accounts, the library as the world knew it ceased to exist long ago. Scholars still search in and around Alexandria in hopes of someday finding some remains related to this fantastic library of ancient times. While the great Library of Alexandria was destroyed, a smaller library named the Serapeum existed sometime thereafter. As great and impressive as the Library of Alexandria remains in the annals of history, the ultimate legacy of such a huge and rich collection of texts burned in the fire of 391 AD has been racist prejudice. Knowledge was recorded everywhere, and it continued to be future down on everyone who dwelt in that same region and across the Mediterranean Sea. What those countless papyrus rolls containing references to their cultures and histories revealed was that the Egyptians were creators of great civilization, and it is this testimony from the burned books, such as the libraries at Ebla and the Library of Mari, that went the furthest in helping to burst the bonds of religious intolerance and misconceptions about the ancient world. The general consensus is that the library was destroyed on more than one occasion and that it was gradually broken up around the time of the decline of the Roman Empire. The Library of Alexandria today remains the most popular and widely attested structure of ancient times. Much of the scholarship as to the leading suspects in the burning of the library has to do with the amount of damage that was reportedly sustained by the library. It is known that the Library of Alexandria was located in a coastal district of the city, also known as a difficult place marred by violent disputes. The transformation of the unknown cemetery during imperial times is not certain, but we do know the library was described in true preservation of ancient texts, so it may have evolved into a site of conservation, even if it was not originally designed for that purpose. When did the Library of Alexandria burn? It was one of the greatest tragedies of our past. The lost knowledge that was destroyed serving as a reminder of how the world can be even further ahead in the future, if not for such a devastation. It is theorized one of the most likely burnings occurred during the Great Destruction of 641, when the Arabs led by General Amr ibn el-As laid siege and defeated the city. While one of the burnt fires was the work of a navy, who was most likely responsible for setting the great library up in flames, it still led to the general destruction of the place. The burning of the library has been described as one of the greatest catastrophes to ever occur in the ancient world. Some experts believe it would have been responsible for the complete loss of most of the collective knowledge that we had during the time period of which the act happened. However, what was lost was not just books per se, but the intellectual aspect that one has decided to describe as a visionary act of planned destruction. The act also threw us really far behind in the future, especially when it came to metallurgy, the building of large structures, mathematics, art, medicine, astronomy, and many other fields of study. If the Library of Alexandria was to be destroyed, one of the people responsible would have been Julius Caesar. But this act of tragedy had even more astonishing implications. Estimates of the size of the Library of Alexandria collection can run as high as 500,000 scrolls. The library was founded, after all, by a ruler who was required to read every book on pain of punishment. Much of what we think we know about the library is the stuff of legend. The tales of its founding by Alexander the Great, of call number systems, acquisition policies, and dukedoms of books. But mention of the word and scholars will come to blows over whether it's a firman or a papal bull that destroyed the place. Because the funny thing is, for all that we think of it as an enduring landmark of ancient learning, the only thing about which scholars agree is that they do not agree where it was, why it was, or even how long it stood. Neither archaeology nor preserved texts has served to break the deadlock. Historical accounts significantly differ on several points regarding who was responsible for the loss. Controversy reigns on the year of the disaster, historians barely managing to agree on a 3-century span in which to place it. Everyone involved seems to agree that at least part of the collection was still safely held within the confines of the library until 48 BC, when several scrolls were destroyed in a fire at the docks. Just 8 years later or so, a different book burning occurred in Alexandria, one in which a portion of the collection was destroyed during the Julius Caesarian bloodbath there. The location of the library, though mentioned frequently by ancient authors, is difficult to untangle from folklore. Debates have also raged on the exact location of the library itself. There is sparse archaeological evidence, mostly due to the fact that so few buildings from the Ptolemaic period remain. It is generally accepted by scholars that the Bibliotheca may have been located in the royal quarter, which also contained the palaces, offices, and religious sites most associated with the Ptolemaic monarchs. If detailed enough texts or catalogues of the library did exist, from which the geography could be ascertained, they have not survived the years since the library itself. Location debates, though a hot topic to scholars in the 18th and 19th centuries, have cooled seriously with the more recent integrative approaches of researching Alexandria as a city and kingdom, rather than focusing exclusively on the magnificent collection as had been common before. Many historic authors situated the library in one of two places, deposited as a part of the Mautian complex or planted apart in its own structure. The museum, generally agreed as a place of study and meeting, contained seminar rooms, dining halls, halls of exercise, a hostel, physics laboratory, and observatory by some, wherein linguists and mathematicians smudged uncaptured figures and their corresponding letters on board with white paint in teaching their students. The case for relocating the museum and library, paradoxically, has been supported by archaeological evidence following a discovery of a hall in the northern wall of the Egyptian Museum Chamber of the Paupers, showing a close semblance to supposed renderings of the Mushan found in Griffith's Carte de Situation. Built of timber and mud brick, the structure was an L-shaped structure that twisted through and surrounded the old Serapeum, linking it to the harbour through the museum. During 2001, a new Library of Alexandria was constructed in the Egyptian city of El Shatbi, some distance from where the lost library once stood. Containing 5 specialized libraries, including a library for instructional resources, a collection for Arabic books, and the Internet Archive's Internet Archive Egypt project, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina serves as a cultural institution and public space. Furthermore, attempts to rediscover this ancient library are made by researchers around the world who conduct numerous studies, excavations, and essays to piece together what knowledge was lost when the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. In 1995, archaeologist Jean-Yves Empereur and his team discovered the ruins of Cleopatra's ancient palace and temple quarter, including lecture halls in the Serapeum along the coast of Alexandria. When this location was discovered, they also found a columned hall with a peristyle and a later Christian basilica. In May 2004, Empereur and his team, while classifying artifacts excavated in the vicinity of the known library, noted that they had already uncovered 12 lecture halls, the remains of which extended far beyond the southern boundary of the known library. Testing will not be enough. An excavation trial made towards the north would be the only way to determine how many more lecture halls remain hidden beneath the modern city. Furthermore, a mock excavation using old photographs and objects from the first round of excavations was conducted, designed to mimic the actual steps that would be undertaken in a proper excavation were it to be conducted. Would-be excavators would need to practice identifying the provenance of artifacts from the urban museum's Serapeum, reshaping stone engraving technology and building an outdoor dig, they argued, but also cautioned that a major excavation may never be conducted, in part because urbanization of the site was, in 2004, already nearly total. Since the very fact of losing such a treasure is so monumental, numerous archaeological excavations have looked for evidence of the library. Because Alexandria is such a bustling metropolis, previous attempts to resolve the problem have been to mount underwater explorations. Such base searches tend to solidify rather than weaken belief in the library's destruction, showing evidence of major ruins, including sphinxes and the semi-nomadic dwellers of sunken cities. In 1992, a team of Franco-Egyptian archaeologists, sponsored by the New York-based International Center of the Study of the Preservation and the Restoration of the Cultural Property, launched an excavation of an area of Alexandria that was known from ancient accounts to contain important Ptolemaic civilization sites. When unearthing residential quarters dating back to the late Ptolemaic period, something far better was also found. A well-preserved part of Alexandria's library. The cassette library seems to have included acting areas, reading rooms, towering shelves for parchment books, and living quarters for the library staff. Also found were two sarcophagi dating from the latter 1st and early 2nd centuries AD. One man had been buried with a scroll case and the other with writing paraphernalia. This find appears to support the theory that the library was still in use up until the time of its destruction. According to the project's chief archaeologist, Michael Jones, we had always said that we doubted that after 146 BC people would have continued to use a library in a part of the royal palaces. It would have been like going to Harrods to do your research. But if the library was still maintained out in the community, then, coincidentally, finding data for the continual community use on the very same site as the royal palaces would be neat. Impact on the development of knowledge. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria ushered in the dark ages of knowledge and, in turn, human progress. The exact date of the library's destruction is unknown. While sources say the library was destroyed by fire multiple times over the centuries before its destruction, many historians argue that the library gradually fell out of use and finally disappeared due to underfunding under the Roman Empire. However it happened, the loss was almost unimaginable. The library contained hundreds of thousands of works that were collected, translated, copied, and stored by scholars from around the globe. Little knowledge known to mankind in antiquity that was not recorded in the library in some shape or form. What's more, the works are believed to be irreplaceable, like an empire that, if it had succeeded, could have prevented the Dark Ages and changed human history as we know it. It's natural to wonder about the contents of the library. Could the works contained within it have changed the narrative of human history to date? That's the source of pure speculation, but the truth remains that all progress over the last 2,000 years has been made in the dark compared to the accumulated knowledge we had just a few short millennia ago. The Library of Alexandria was an inspiration in antiquity, and its burning was a tragedy. An all too real reminder that the flame which engulfs accumulated human knowledge can turn civilization to ash in the blink of an eye. It is a lesson we would all do well to remember today. For many of us, the most spectacular loss of the classical world resided in the destruction of Alexandria's library, that marvel of bibliographic ambition. It was not just that the vanished collection contained so many works by so many thinkers, though one that logged almost every bit of recorded information or imaginative literature was bound to stack up a hefty pile of paperwork. It was also that the library had acted as a kind of focusing lens for the intellectual energy of the ancient world. While it brought us large algebra and Euclid's Elements, myth compendia, and Terpsichore's dance manual, a youthful biography of Jesus, and some of the early lists of Christian scripture, its theoretician, Ptolemaic managers, and scholarly compilers sat at the harmonic meeting point of their eclectic culture. They could see knowledge as correlating and simultaneous. In Alexandria, alongside Homer and Aristophanes and Quran, one could consult any given thinker's edition of Genesis. Thanks to the combined efforts of the selective historians, librarians, and coins, we can generate at least subsections of these hypothetical libraries for other cultures as well. But because of the breathtaking breadth of the original, the Alexandrian light is particularly entrancing. Moreover, it is fun to speculate that we might look at today's global culture in a similar manner. What of our multi-leveled civilization trapped on the acceleration spiral at the millennium's as yet unidentified harmonic? Suppose then that we could have perceived the light refracted by Alexandria's immediate successors, and suppose that these newborn Alexandrias had been successful in not burning down their architectural plot pointers toward various travestied originals. In truth, the roasts of Heliodorus and Theon fit well into a variety of literary and cultural references that allude to the library, both in revelry and in lament. The destruction of ancient libraries, including that at Alexandria, conjured reactions of mourning and disdain early on. More recently, commenters in a variety of essays mourn the loss of all the knowledge carried by the library. Many scholars favor giving to the implements of destruction divine assistance. One late first-century account that might refer to the library offers a bit of glitz. Aulus Gellius, a Latin author and orator, reports a Roman visitor's account of his visit to Alexandria in his work Attic Nights, Noctes Atticae. In speaking of the brilliant sundial of Euclid, the Roman sums up the magnificence of the ancient city, claiming simply, "I saw the height and beauty of the city with its porticos and numerous magnificent buildings, second only to the time when the library was destroyed by barbarians." As for the visible remnants of the library, Strabo informs us repeatedly that the area now simply hosts public baths. The message seems to be clear. In the alert and aware community of Mediterranean intellectuals, creating texts and institutions, some might even make stuff up about the library. The temple to muses that Ptolemy Soter raised to make way for his Mution moved to relative obscurity and thus immaterial to centuries of descriptive accounts, as an enduring, even as far back as the 17th century when efforts began in earnest again to understand the library and research it. Savants have labored to separate the real library from the library as it has been imagined by a bevy of wishful thinkers. The latter technique, used to superimpose unreliable historical clues in order to arrive at sensible results, was named the reversible mantle, a nod to Italo Calvino, who assigned this work to one of his most inventive characters. How the precious scraps of architectural fact discovered by Richardson met or even impeded the progression of sentiment about the museum is unknown. But though voluntarist reconstructions of the vanished archive still proliferate, serious scholarship has accepted that the bait had been taken and imagined porticos turned ghostly in public memory, and numerous abecedarians and novelists have drawn upon the retrospective transformation of the library in Western imagination for a fuller discussion of the representations of the institution in literature and art. See the preceding essay. The ancient Library of Alexandria was a truism of the literary and historical imagination. It persisted in the rhetoric of later writers and philosophers who admired and lamented the lost storehouse of ancient learning. At the same time, mysteries and myths surrounding the library had developed within the ancient environment, which have since infused popular culture representations. The knowledge held by the magistrates of the library was thought to be secret, for example by the 17th century CE historian Edward Gibbon, and by William Golding in his 1971 novel The Scorpion God. Early traditions had it that a group of scholars was separately served by its own slaves at a table in the main space of the museum, and it was thought that a gypsy woman might tell the combined future of those scholars by placing a powerful and propitiatory spell upon their food or drink. Depictions of Alexandrian society's demand for papyrus abound in fiction and in the narratives of the popular imagination, frequently taken as a singular sign of their wisdom or a peculiarity linkage between contemporary and ancient societies. There are many artistic depictions of life at the library, its books and scholars. The ancient biographer Diogenes Laertius records a legendary story that revealed something of a dark underside to the library's collection, and the subsequent paradise it constituted, in which the librarian Demetrius of Phalerum reported to Ptolemy and the Delcat, "The books that it contains are useless, apropioi, and none of them ought to be saved." DL 5.83. In William Faulkner's 1973 novel The Reivers, the narrator narrates recollections of a coloured Baptist preacher person clothing himself and drinking a quart of whiskey, whilst at the same time reading out loud, "Every respect, 2 books written in Greek." If you found this video intriguing, hit the like button and share it with other history lovers. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more fascinating stories from history. What do you think was lost with the Library of Alexandria? Share your thoughts in the comments below.